With him, His Excellency Joseph Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, and His Excellency Mr. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. And we also have their respective delegations, representatives of the media, and people following us through internet, through the social media. Let's welcome.
Toma la palabra el excelentísimo señor
to Presidents and Prime Minister.
Presidente de los Estados
Joseph
Unidos
Biden Jr., President of the United States of America. You have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back here in Mexico City. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for hosting the Prime Minister and me for the 10th North American Leaders Summit. This is a magnificent forum. And we're true partners, the three of us, working together with mutual respect and a genuine like for one another to advance a safer and more prosperous future for all of our people. And the reason for this summit, this trilateral relationship, are so impactful is because we share a common vision for the future grounded on common values. And I mean that sincerely, common values we share in our countries. Since becoming president, I've been laser focused on rebuilding the U.S. economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not the trickle down economy, because the bottom up and the middle out, it works because the wealthy do very well and everybody else does well too, but everybody does well. And from the bottom up means investing in priorities for working families. The United States has made historic bipartisan investments in infrastructure and innovation that are already beginning to deliver concrete benefits to the American people, and I would argue it will ultimately reap benefits for the entire North America. We've renewed our dependence, deepened our cooperation with our closest friends and allies, none closer than Mexico and Canada, to take on the biggest challenges facing the region and, quite frankly, the world. Because there can no longer be any question, none, in today's interconnected world. We cannot wall ourselves off from shared problems. We are stronger and better when we work together, the three of us. And together, we've made enormous progress since our last summit, from fighting COVID-19 and strengthening our ability to address public health threats, to investing in and building a 21st century workforce. At the top of our shared agenda today is keeping North America the most competitive, prosperous, and resilient economic region of the world. And the strength of our economic relationship among our nations not only supports good-paying jobs in all of our countries, but it generates tremendous growth. Now we're working to a future to strengthen our cooperation on supply chains and critical minerals, so we can continue to accelerate in our efforts to build the technologies of tomorrow right here in North America. This summit also builds on the continual consultation and cooperation with one another to take on the challenges that impact all three of our nations. Our entire hemisphere is experiencing unprecedented levels of migration, greater than any time in history. And North America, at the North America Summit Leaders hosted in Washington in 2021, we launched the idea of a regional-wide approach to a regional-wide problem. The idea grew into the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, which 21 countries ultimately adopted at the Summit of the Americas 6 months ago. And we're working together, especially with our North American partners, to fulfill our commitments under that declaration. They include the policy I announced last week to expand safe and legal pathways for immigrants from Nicaragua, Cuba, and Haiti. And we're seeking a better life here in the United States of America. We also want to thank you, Mr. President, for stepping up to receive into Mexico those not following the lawful pathways we've made available instead of attempting to unlawfully cross the border between our countries. On my way here, I stopped in El Paso, Texas, to see the situation with my own eyes and to meet with U.S. border security officials. It's putting real strain on the communities in both Mexico and the United States. We're working together to address this challenge in a way that upholds our nation's laws and protects the human rights of migrants facing desperate circumstances. We're also working together to take on the scourge of human smuggling and illegal drug trafficking. In just the last 6 months, our joint patrols in Mexico have resulted in the arrest of more than 7,000 human smugglers. We've seized more than 20,000 pounds of deadly fentanyl at the border. And today, we've discussed how all three of us can continue to deepen and strengthen our shared efforts to cut off the flow of illegal fentanyl, including by tackling the precursor chemicals used in synthetic drugs as we go after the laboratories where they're made and the stash houses where they're stored. We also talked about meeting our commitments to make North America a clean energy powerhouse, and I believe that's within our grasp, and a global leader in addressing the climate crisis. That means working together to promote zero-emissions vehicles, to build charging stations for electric vehicles that are compatible across our international borders. It means exploring shared markets for clean hydrogen. And it means working together to meet our ambitious commitments under the Paris Agreement, including tackling methane and black carbon. And finally, as three vibrant democracies, we recognize our greatest strength is our people. Let me say that again. Vital democracies, we are, and our greatest strength are our people, the strength of our people. And the key to our competitive edge in the world is our incredible diversity. So together, we're working to address the inequities that for too long have plagued historically marginalized communities in each of our nations, to make sure everyone gets a fair shot. It's one of the smartest investments we can make for our future, and we're going to make it together. So, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm honored to stand with you today, and I'm grateful to have both of you as partners, and I might add friends, as we work together to realize a shared vision for North America. Thank you very much.
Let's give the floor to His Excellency, Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau.
Bonjour, good afternoon, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
President López Obrador, mi amigo, thank you for having us here in Mexico City. President Biden, my friend, thank you for all your hard work and your valuable insights at today's meetings. As a continent, we are unique. We are three large democracies committed to freedom, human rights, equality, and creating real opportunity for everyone. We share deep ties as friends and trading partners. Au cours des 30 dernières années,
during these 30 years, the economies of Mexico, US, and Canada have become closely tied because of NAFTA. This trade agreement helped our economies grow and created millions of good employments, and the trade amongst our borders drew investors from the world over.
NAFTA the most competitive in the world. It makes sense why. Combined, we are home to 500 million people. We have an extraordinarily strong innovation ecosystem. Our combined GDP is larger than that of the European Union. And as leaders, we are all dedicated to driving economic growth that supports the middle class and those working hard to join it. These are all foundations of a strong and resilient continental economy. People remember what happened just a few years ago when the certainty of this partnership was in question. Investors, businesses, workers, and citizens all worried about what would happen. When free trade is at risk, that isn't good for competition in the global market. Thankfully, the belief in free and fair trade won the day. We renegotiated and we got an even better deal. To put it simply, we are and always will be stronger together. The world today is facing a lot of uncertainty, with the rise in authoritarian leaders causing global instability and the high cost of living putting stress on families at home. It's important that we come together as leaders and as friends to look at ways to make our economies more resilient. Today we discussed how we can build reliable value chains on this continent for everything from critical minerals to electric vehicles to semiconductors. This is good for workers, good for consumers, and good for communities across our countries. La COVID-19 nous a montré toute l'importance des chaînes d'approvisionnement, de la résilience économique,
supply chains and
toute
economic
l'importance de se
resilience, the
préparer au
importance
futur
of being
pandémie.
prepared, being ready
Essayer de les
to
prévenir.
face a new pandemic and
Aujourd'hui,
try to
on a
prevent
parlé
it.
des
Today
façons
we
d'améliorer
spoke
notre
about a way
coopération dans le
to
domaine
improve
de la
our
santé
cooperation
pour être
in the
prêt
realm of
à
health
intervenir.
services in order to be ready to
We can
intervene.
boost our economic
We
resilience even further through our work to build a clean economy. Things like clean energy, including hydrogen, manufacturing zero-emission vehicles, and encouraging more people to adopt them. This is an enormous opportunity for workers and for business. On doit tous prendre part à l'action
We
climatique.
should all be
Les
part
gouvernements
of
et le
climate
secteur
action.
privé doivent
Government
travailler
and private
ensemble
sector should
vers
work
l'atteinte des
together
objectifs de
to
2030.
attain the
Ces
2030
objectifs ne
goals and
consistent pas
objectives.
seulement
These
à
goals
réduire
are
la
not only
pollution
about
pour
reducing
atteindre les cibles de
pollution
Paris.
to get to
Il
the
se
Paris
rapporte aussi à notre
objectives.
engagement
They
à
have to do
conserver
to our
30%
with
de nos
our
terres et de
engagements
nos
to preserve
océans
30%
d'ici
of our
2030.
lands and oceans
Le mois dernier,
in
à
2030.
COP15 à Montréal,
In
le
last
Canada a réuni
COP15
des
in
pays du monde
Montreal,
entier.
Canada
On a pu conclure un accord
convened
historique pour protéger la nature,
countries around the world,
la santé
and
de
we
l'environnement
reached a
est
historic
indispensable
agreement to
à la
preserve and
santé
protect
de
nature.
l'économie.
This is essential for the health
Canada
of the
is
economy.
pleased to have our Mexican and American friends committed so strongly to protecting clean air, clean water, and a brighter future. Canada is also pleased to see all three countries take steps towards building a more diverse, equal, and inclusive society, a society where there is opportunity for everyone, where women and girls are politically and economically empowered, including Indigenous women and girls, where the benefits of growth are felt by workers and families across the economy. By doing this, we create a more stable, prosperous, and equal future. And we build economies that work for all North Americans. We made progress on a lot of different things today. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and as North American leaders, we recognize the roles our countries play in being a source of stability and security, not just in the region, but around the world. Ce sommet a été productif.
This summit was extremely fruitful. We were able to reiterate our vision and the force of our partnership.
Progress in the coming year, and I look forward to hosting you both in Canada for the next North American Leaders Summit. Thank you. Merci. Gracias.
Now, let's give the floor to Mr. Andrés Manuel López Obrador, President of the United Mexican States. I want to thank, in a very sincere fashion, the participation of President Biden and the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and also the participation of their respective wives, Jill, Dr. Sophie, and I also want to thank their delegations and teams. The mere fact of being here together today as good neighbors in this environment of respect, to look for the well-being of our peoples in a joint manner is in itself a very important historic event, a true happening. Nonetheless, I wanted to highlight that we've agreed on strengthening our economic, trade, commercial relations, and for that we're going to be creating a joint committee aimed at planning and substituting imports in North America so that we may try to be increasingly self-sufficient in this part of the world, and to turn development cooperation into a reality, as well as the well-being of all the countries of our continent. We want that to be a reality. The United States, Canada, and Mexico will propose, each one of those countries will be proposing 4 members for the formation, for the creation of this task force, of this committee of 12 specialists that not only know this issue we are going to be working on, but they will also have our absolute trust to motivate, to persuade, and invite the business community, workers, public servants of all 3 governments, and to convince them about the importance, the transcendence of being united in North America, and for us to be able to seek from here on this unity in everything we do throughout the American continent. On the part of Mexico, in this group, we are going to be represented by Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard, Rogelio Ramírez de la O, Finance Minister of Mexico, Raquel Buenrostro Sanchez, who is the Secretary of Economy, and Alfonso Romo Garza, who represents the business community. He's an independent businessman, Mr. Romo is. And we also discussed, as a priority issue, economic, commercial, trade, integration, as I have already expressed, of the entire American continent, and the well-being of the peoples, and the new relations of cooperation, leaving behind interventionism, hegemonic interventionism. Let me do a set-aside here to express my acknowledgement, my recognition to Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden for the way which has been so solidary, in which they've acted, in which they are acting vis-à-vis the attempt of coup d'etat in Brazil. This shows that there's a commitment, authentic commitment, in favor of democracy. Our support for President Lula of Brazil. We have to, together, we have to be able to accomplish all this. Everything that President Biden just said, we have to be able to accomplish this. That is, in equal footing, for us to be treating each other as good neighbors, economic allies, and as friends. We, of course, will be helping to turn this dream into a reality. And we are very enthused at the certainty that this is something we can accomplish. Peace
es fruto de la
is
justicia.
the result of justice.
Los problemas sociales no se
Social
resuelven
problems cannot be solved
solo con medidas
only
coercitivas.
with coercion measures. We should always attend to the scourge of violence and the migration phenomenon with an approach, humanitarian approach of opportunities for the well-being
Las personas
of everyone.
son buenas por
People are good
naturaleza,
by nature,
y son las circunstancias
and it's circumstances that sometimes make it necessary for someone to take the path of antisocial behaviors.
Nosotros
We
lo hemos constatado
have seen this in Mexico
también en
and
los pueblos
also
hermanos,
in our sister countries,
los países de Honduras,
the
y
countries
El
of
Salvador.
Honduras and El Salvador,
Por
for
ejemplo, en
instance.
nuestro país,
In our country,
como no se
in
permite la
Mexico,
corrupción,
since corruption is not
y
allowed
el presupuesto se
and
destina
the budget
al
is
desarrollo
used for development
y apoyar
and
a
supporting
los más pobres.
the poorest sectors of our population,
Ahora
Today,
no solo hay empleos,
we not only have jobs,
ha bajado la
employment,
violencia,
we have seen
Es menos
reductions
la
in
migración.
violence, we have less migration as well,
también
and
se ha atemperado
we've also
la
tempered
frustración
frustration,
y permanece encendida
and
la llama.
what we can see is
De la
this
esperanza.
flame which is alive. I'm talking about the flame of hope.
La paz
Peace
es fruto.
is the fruit, it
De
is
la
the
justicia.
result of justice.
El caso de Centroamérica
The
es
Central American
excepcional.
case is exceptional.
Con muy pocos recursos
With just few
estamos
resources,
ayudando
we
a
are helping
productores de comunidades
producers
en Honduras y El
in
Salvador
communities in Honduras and
para que
Salvador,
siembren sus
El
tierras
Salvador, so
y
that they can
cuenten
grow their land,
con
so that they
asesoría
can grow their
técnica,
crops with
sustento
technical
e ingresos
assistance,
básicos.
support, and basic
Y en los pueblos
income. And in
donde
those
estamos
towns
aplicando
where we are
estas
applying
acciones,
those actions,
en particular el
particularly
programa Sembrando Vida,
program we call
de jóvenes
Sembrando
construyendo
Vida,
el futuro,
which means sowing life
no
and
solo se ha
youth
reducido
building
la
the future
cantidad de
program.
personas que
We've
desean
not
emigrar
just seen a reduction of
hacia
people
Estados
wanting to
Unidos
migrate to
en
the
busca de
United States
oportunidades de
seeking
trabajo y de
opportunities
mejores
of
condiciones de
better
vida,
living
sino que para
conditions and
muchos
jobs.
jóvenes,
But for many
la
young people of those
delincuencia ha
countries,
dejado de ser la única
crime has
posibilidad
stopped
de
being the
sobrevivencia
only possibility
en
of
esa vida
survival and the only way
El
to
tema
move
migratorio,
forward in life.
como
The
otros,
migration issue, as many other
fue
issues,
tratado con amplitud.
as discussed in a very broad
Se llegaron
fashion,
importantes
and we
acuerdos
reached important
de los
agreements
tres países
among
en
the three
beneficio
countries for the
de
benefit
nuestros pueblos.
of our peoples.
Como se podrá
As
constatar, como ustedes
You will be able to see,
a saberlo,
as you will also be able to
a
know,
través de un comunicado
through a
conjunto
communique, a joint communique that we
se
have
entregará
that will be
de
provided to
manera
you
inmediata.
immediately.
Por último, quiero
Finally,
agradecer
I want to
al
thank
primer ministro
Prime Minister
Justin
Justin
Trudeau
Trudeau
por su extraordinario
for his extraordinary
y fraterno
and
programa
fraternal program
que consiste en
that
otorgar
consists
visas
of
temporales
granting
de trabajo
temporary working visas
a jornaleros.
for laborers, workers.
Este programa ya
This
beneficia
program is already benefiting
a 25,000
25,000 men and women,
25,000
25,000 Mexicans.
Es un camino
This is a path to follow
el de la
that
migración
is
ordenada.
orderly migration.
El primer ministro
Prime
Trudeau
Minister Trudeau
es un gran
is
aliado.
a great ally of Mexico.
Al presidente Biden,
President Biden,
mi agradecimiento
I want to
sincero
thank you
por
sincerely
mantener con México
for
una relación
maintaining with Mexico a
cooperación,
relationship of cooperation,
de amistad
of friendship,
sincera,
sincere friendship,
de
sir,
respeto
of respect
a nuestros paisanos
for our fellow
que
men
viven y trabajan
who live and
honradamente
work
en Estados
in a very
Unidos
honest fashion
y que
in
no
the
son
United States,
acosados
who are not harassed,
ni padecen de redadas
they're not suffering
como
raids,
sucedía
as it
lamentablemente
Unfortunately, it used to happen in the past. We have said this, and I repeat it today. I insist on this. You, President Biden, you are the first president of the United States in a very long time that has not built not even 1 meter of wall. And that, we thank you for that, sir. Although some might not like it, although the conservatives don't like it, in a very special manner, I also want to say that I have requested, in a very respectful manner, President Biden, I have requested on insisting, and I know that this is not a simple issue or matter, but it's a fair and very just matter. And that's why I'm proposing it. That's why I'm mentioning this. And also because I fully trust President Biden. I've asked President Biden to insist before the U.S. Congress to regularize the migration situations of millions of Mexicans who have been in the States, working, living in the United States, and contributing to the development of that great nation, which is the United States of America. I have reaffirmed that President Biden is a man with convictions, who maintains principles, ideals to guarantee, to ensure, as many others, men, women, in the United States and throughout the world. And the Statue of Liberty never, never, ever should become a symbol, a void, an empty symbol. Let me conclude by saying that my professor, great poet, Carlos Pellicer, my master, my teacher in 1930, he said that the wish of freedom, of liberty, is the biggest fruit that has materialized, that is in the heart of humans. To be doing that, we have to be free. The sentiments of justice are the children of freedom, of liberty. Never, ever being slaves will we be able to be just and fair. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin a Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, and the U.S. press, Your Excellency, Joseph Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, yes, will take a question from a journalist, a reporter from the United States. Please.
All right. I was having trouble hearing, but I'd like to call on Associated Press Colleen Long for the first question.
Thanks, Mr. President. Hola, señor, and hi, Prime Minister Trudeau. For Mr. President,
sí, señor
you've
Presidente.
been accused of being too soft on border security and now too hard following the recent border policy changes. What's the right balance? And on the news at home, can you explain how classified documents ended up in one of your offices, and should the public have been notified sooner? For Prime Minister Trudeau, there's been a suggestion that Canada lead a multinational security force in Haiti. I wondered if that was a possibility and what you would need. Y señor usted presidente, muchas gracias por la bienvenida esta semana. Quiero preguntar.
President López Obrador.
You would be willing to accept more migrants arriving to the U.S.-Mexico border. What do you want from the U.S. in return?
Answer first. Well, let me get rid of the easy one first. People know I take classified documents and classified information seriously. When my lawyers were clearing out my office at the University of Pennsylvania, they set up an office for me, secure office in the Capitol. The 4 years after being vice president, I was a professor at Penn. They found some documents in a box in a locked cabinet, or at least a closet. And as soon as they did, they realized there were several classified documents in that box. And they did what they should have done. They immediately called the archives, turned them over to the archives, and I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office. But I don't know what's in the documents. My lawyers have not suggested I ask what documents they were. I've turned over the boxes. They've turned over the boxes to the archives, and we're cooperating fully with the review, and which I hope will be finished soon, and there'll be more detail at that time. The first question now I forgot. No. Your first question related to?
I asked if the.
I'm only joking. The answer is you've got both extremes are wrong. It's a basic middle proposition. Here, look, as was mentioned by all of us in one way or another, this has been the greatest migration in human history around the world, as well as in this hemisphere. And when I got elected, the first major piece of legislation I introduced was to reform the immigration process, to make it more orderly, to make sure people have access under the law. And so what we found out, and not just in my visit to El Paso, but before that, we found out is that our Republican friends and a few Democrats are very critical of what's going on the border, but yet refused to even look at the detailed document I submitted for the Congress to consider to reform the process completely. And so, number one, right now, a majority of our migrants are coming from 4 countries: Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua. And we're expanding the very successful parole program we had with regard to Venezuela to Cuba and to Nicaragua and to Haiti to provide safe and orderly and humane processing for people fleeing those countries to come to the United States and claiming seeking asylum. And this is going to reduce the number of people illegally trying to cross the border. Venezuelans were trying to enter the country. That has dropped off dramatically because we've allowed them to go directly to whatever country, the first country they go to, directly contact the United States, make sure that they make their application, showing that they do a background check, they in fact have access to a sponsor, and that they've been examined. And that way they're able to come through ports of entry. And it's dropped off, I'm going to make sure I get the numbers right, dramatically from 1,100 persons trying to enter per day to 250 a day. I've asked and I want to thank the President of Mexico for agreeing to take up to 3,000 people back that don't meet this criteria. Because look, right now, the cartels make a lot of money, which they use for drug trafficking as well. People have to make it through jungles and a long journey to the border, and many are victimized, not only in terms of what they have to pay, but victimized physically in other ways. And so we're trying to make it easier for people to get here, opening up the capacity to get here, but not have them go through that god-awful process. We're going to continue our efforts to address the root causes of migration to help people stay in their home countries. I've asked the Congress for $4 billion to provide for that. We've also had our Vice President provide for private donations of over $3 billion to make sure that people, look, all of you know, all of us in the United States are immigrants. Mine go all the way back to the Irish famine, but the point is all of us have been immigrants. And one of the things that comes across fairly clearly is it's not like people sit in their home, city, county, town, and say, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have. Give it to a coyote, go through some jungles and a long path up to the United States, smuggle us across the border, drop us in a desert, and won't that be fun in a country we don't even speak the language? We can do more than merely just make legal immigration more streamlined, but we can also do it by preventing people from wanting to have to leave in the first place, by helping their communities, in fact, better their circumstances. And so I hope, and by the way, my proposals are supported by the Chamber of Commerce, by the American Labor Movement, which is an unusual coalition, and a whole range of people. The point here is that my Republican friends in Congress should join us in the solutions. And the one last point I'll make, and I'm sorry to go on so long, but we spend a lot of time talking about it, is we have to increase the technological capabilities at the border, both to intercept illegal drugs and other contraband, as well as people being smuggled across the border. We have now the ability to use, and some of you have seen them, I know you have, I'm sure, these trucks that ride alongside of a tractor trailer. It's like a giant x-ray machine, and it can determine what's inside that tractor trailer, and thousands cross the border every day in legal commerce. And so we're allowed to determine whether or not there are fentanyls in there, drugs in there, people being smuggled across the border. We're going to provide significantly more of those vehicles for the people to be able to determine at the border what is coming across legally and illegally. A lot more to say, but I've probably already said too much. Thank you.
Por parte de la prensa de Canadá, preguntará David Cochrane de CBC.
David Cochrane, CBC,
señor
from Canada,
Justin Trudeau,
will be
primer ministro de Canadá.
asking a question to
Your question, and I'll fold the
Prime
Haiti
Minister
question in
Trudeau.
as well.
Okay, thank you, Prime Minister. A question for you and for President Biden as well. President Biden, you've talked a lot about economic cooperation and building continental supply chains and resilience here. But since you've been president, Canadians have seen what they consider to be protectionist U.S. protectionism from you in things such as the Buy American Act. So what assurances can you give to Canadians and Mexicans watching this at home that they will be equal partners in the economic opportunity you're talking about in this transition and not have to confront further attempts at American protectionism? President López Obrador, if you have anything to say on that, we'd love to hear it. And Prime Minister Trudeau, if you can answer the Haiti question, but also explain to us what steps your government needs to take advantage of this opportunity on the continental supply chain resiliency to ensure that Canadian companies make things like semiconductors and don't just supply critical minerals to American companies.
Thank you very much. First on Haiti, the situation in Haiti is heartbreaking. Canada has stood with the people of Haiti for decades, including over the past 2 years with multiple interventions with the UN, with other partners on the ground, military interventions, police interventions, even prison guards. We have continued to stand with the people of Haiti, and we will continue to. Obviously, this current situation is heart-wrenching, and we need to continue to be there for the people of Haiti, but we need to make sure that the solutions are driven by the people of Haiti themselves. That's why Canada's focus, as we've stepped up over the past months, has been, first of all, in putting significant sanctions on the elites who are responsible for so much of the violence and political instability in Haiti. A handful of small, extraordinarily wealthy families in Haiti have been causing much of the strife because of political and pecuniary interests, and that is why the sanctions that Canada has put forward are causing significant impacts on the ground. We're also moving forward with significant supports for the Haitian National Police, including with armored vehicles that the Americans have stepped up on as well, to ensure that the police is able to stabilize the situation on the ground. Obviously, there's much more to do. We've sent down a group of interlocutors to work both on the political side, but also to liaise directly with the security officials on the ground so that we can be responsive in immediate ways to what is needed for the Haitian National Police to get a better control and ensure greater stability for the people of Haiti. The UN called in September for the free flow of food, medicines, water, and fuel. Much of that has started again. It's still not where it needs to be, but we're going to continue to lean in on ensuring that that happens. But at the same time, we are working with partners across the Caribbean and indeed with the United States and Mexico to ensure that if the situation starts to deteriorate once again, we will have options. But like I said, we're going to make sure that what we do this time allows for the Haitian people to get the situation under control, and a big part of that is putting those sanctions on the Haitian leadership that are responsible for so much of the misery people are going through. In regards to the continental supply chain, that was at the center of our conversations throughout this North American Leaders Summit. The idea that we already work extraordinarily well together with NAFTA, but there's so much more we can be doing at a time where supply chains around the world are under increasing stress, and significant economic actors around the world are becoming less reliable as partners and less desirable as partners in building the technologies and the energy futures that we want. That's why, and you brought up a few examples of it, our critical minerals approach, a strategy that we just released a few weeks ago, is focused not just on mining the critical minerals that Canada has, that North America and the world needs in responsible environmental partnership with Indigenous peoples, doing it the right way, but also the development, the processing, the transforming into batteries, the transforming into technology that goes along the value chain as something that is important for Canada. And yes, it's something that we're continuing to look at. It's the same thing with electric vehicles, where we're building electric vehicles with our partners in Mexico and in the United States. But Canada, again, from the critical minerals that go into the batteries and the batteries themselves that we're starting to build, to the steel and aluminum that is amongst the cleanest in the world being developed in Canada, to the technology, the innovation from AI to engineering that is part of it. Canada is very much a partner in what we're developing in terms of more resilient supply chains. So there's lots more to do indeed. Even on semiconductors, the largest semiconductor packaging plant in North America, I believe, is in Bromont, Quebec. And packaging of semiconductors is actually how you assemble them into a unit that can then do the high value calculations and computations that need to happen. These are the kinds of things that Canada is very much focused on in ensuring not just prosperity right now, but good jobs as we move towards a environmentally responsible, net zero, socially inclusive future that the middle class in all three of our countries are relying on. Oui, brièvement en français.
Briefly in French, in regard to Haiti, Canada has always been there to help the Haitian people, and we are working with our partners in the region to guarantee better solutions for the Haitian people. We have laid sanctions against the elites. We are helping the national police in Haiti. We have had good exchanges, good dialogues with our partners in the U.S. and Caribbean countries to guarantee that we will be able to preserve and to have the people of Haiti at the center of the solutions in regard to the economic integration and the competitiveness in North America, be it electric vehicles, be it critical minerals, strategy minerals, and the ones we're going to develop to produce the necessary technologies, or in regard to any other technologies, in order to work together, because we know that North America can offer many solutions, great competitiveness to the rest of the world, and we are a true force to reckon with in our continent.
Por parte de la prensa de México, preguntará Sara Pablo de Grupo Fórmula.
Sarah Pavlov of the Formula Group will pose a question to the constitutional president of the United Mexican States. Yes, good afternoon, Presidents, Prime Minister, and we have a few questions for President Biden. I know that recently you announced the United States will be receiving citizens from Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua. What is the time frame, and are you thinking of expanding the number of people you will be receiving? And is this some other nations could be included? And what is the amount in technological improvements in the United States? And for President López Obrador, how will Mexico be prepared to receive all the migrants the United States will be expelling from its territory? And the new migration center in the southern part of Mexico, what is it all about? And then after this 10th summit, are we going to be seeing changes in migration policies and the way migrants are being treated? And finally, this is for President Biden, fentanyl. What concrete actions are you going to be implementing? What's the impact of the detention of Ovidio Guzman, because the cartel of the Pacific is one of the main fentanyl producers? And finally, another question on energy sector consultations. President Biden, Prime Minister Trudeau, did you discuss those discussions about the USMCA, the TEMEC? Very well. We did speak about migration in a very broad manner. Of course, there is cooperation with the U.S. administration, and at the same time, we have the commitment to protect migrants. What President Biden has proposed is absolutely true. If migrants cross our country, and in some cases they also go through other countries in Latin America to arrive in the United States, migrants are facing so many risks when they do that. Starting with the fact that they are victims of the traffickers, the smugglers, the human traffickers, known as the coyotes or polleros. And they charge migrants a high amount of money to take them northbound. Now, those polleros or coyotes have networks, and at the same time, they hire trailers, trucks, truck trailers. The box of the trailer, they can transport up to 300, 400 people. So constant accidents are taking place on the highways of Mexico, the roads of Mexico, unfortunately. And the worst of it all is that many migrants are being kidnapped by criminal groups, by criminals. They're being murdered. And this is very sad, very painful. That's why I'm speaking about protection. What we want is an in-depth solution. We've always said that people, just as President Biden said, people do not leave their towns, their countries, their families because they like to do it. This is not a pleasure for them. They do it because of the needs they have. This is a necessity. We've always said we have to look at the root causes of all this. We have to try for people to be able to work and be happy where they were born, where their relatives, their customs, their traditions, their cultures are. And we need to invest for that. We need to invest in development of the countries with more inequality and poverty. Because migration has to be an optional thing, not a forced situation. However, in the meantime, because we're of course doing everything we can to accomplish this, Mexico, with just a few resources, is helping. I have already mentioned that. We are working with communities in El Salvador and Honduras. We're going to be starting this in Guatemala and Belize as well. However, we do need to promote development even more and well-being to ensure, guarantee opportunities for those that are forced to migrate and leave their communities. We are not thinking of building any center in the southeastern part of Mexico, any migration center. We're not thinking of that. What we do is help with shelters, with health care services, with food services as well. That's the way we help migrants. And we do celebrate the fact that the U.S. administration has made the decision, rather, to have an orderly migration flow. In the case, for instance, of our Venezuelan brothers and sisters, and I understand that this plan will also be extended, will be expanded to benefit other migrants, other countries. We know for sure that since the announcement was made saying that those permits, humanitarian visas, were going to be granted, in the case, for instance, of the Venezuelan population, we've seen a decrease in migration flows. People crossing Mexico to migrate. This has been a considerable reduction because this was announced in the United States, and this was made public everywhere, saying that 24,000 humanitarian visas or permits were going to be granted, and that the formalities had to be covered, the paperwork, although there are some requirements that have to be met. People decided to do it. So what happened was that a new path has been opened. It didn't exist before. Everything was arriving in the United States, risking everything, risking people's lives, of course, at the risk of their own lives. Now that this mechanism has been approved, people can file their own request, and this might take time. However, there's hope. hope that this purpose is going to be accomplished, the purpose of going to the United States to work, to live. We celebrate this. And we think that, I insist, what Canada is doing is also the right thing to do. And I was talking about our own experience as well. And you can look at data. It's there for you to look at. Because of circumstances in the past, migration corresponded to the sister countries of Central America. Those were the main migration flows from Central America. But for a long time as well, Mexicans migrating, who were going to look for a better living standard, who were going to look for a job in the United States. And just imagine, there are 40 million Mexicans in the United States. 40 million who were born here in Mexico, or they're the children of people who were born in Mexico. Now, what have we been able to accomplish? With all the support for well-being, we've reduced the number of Mexican migrants. Yes. There are less migrants abandoning Mexico now because there's public investment, because out of 35 million families, 30 million families of Mexican families are now receiving at least a program a well-being program. And this is a very direct manner of doing this here in Mexico. All the senior citizens, 65 or over, receive a pension. This is a universal program in Mexico. 11 million of senior citizens in Mexico are getting a pension. 11 million students of low-income families, of poor families, are getting grants, they're getting scholarships. All the boys and girls with disabilities also have their own pension. We have a program for reforestation. It is the most important reforestation program in the world. And we are planting over 1 million hectares of fruit and timber trees. And we are giving jobs to over 400,000 peasants that are growing and planting those trees. So then, all these programs help so that people may be staying in their own communities, in their towns. We built the Dos Bocas refinery, 35,000 jobs. We are now building the Mayan train, which is the biggest railroad works in the world because it's 1,554 kilometers. 1,554 kilometers in 5 states of Mexico. All the Maya region, which is one of the most important archaeological zones of the world. Well, there, people are working building this railroad system. About 300,000 people are building the
Esa
train.
es
So that's
la
really
opción, ese es el
the
camino.
option. That's the path to
El
follow.
desarrollo, el bienestar.
Development, well-being.
Y yo
And
repito,
I insist,
celebro
I
que
repeat, I
tanto
truly
el
celebrate
gobierno de Canadá
that
como
the
el gobierno de
Canadian
Estados
government and the U.S. administration as well
estén,
are now
atendiendo el problema
attending
migratorio
to the
con ese
migration
enfoque.
problem with this type of
Hay,
approach.
lamentablemente,
It's quite lamentable
otros
that there are others,
políticos,
other politicians,
otros gobernantes
other presidents and public officials
actúan
who are acting
hasta de manera
in
inhumana.
a very inhuman
Ahora, en
manner.
esta temporada de invierno,
Right now in this winter season, for instance,
por respeto,
with all due respect,
lo digo de manera
I'm not
directa,
saying this in a very direct manner, but what I'm saying is that, I mean, one of the governors
de
of
nuestro país
our
vecino
neighboring country
cabezón todo un movimiento para
headed
llevar
a movement to
migrantes
take migrants
a Nueva York,
to New York,
a Washington,
to Washington,
y
and
dejarlos ahí.
just
tirados.
drop them there.
Eso es politiquería.
This is politicking.
Eso es completamente
This is
inhumano.
completely inhuman.
Eso no
This
debe de
should
hacerse,
not be done,
porque
because
hay
there
quienes
are those
se olvidan de
who
que
forget
todos somos migrantes.
that we're all migrants.
¿Cómo se
How is it that
desarrolló esa gran nación que
that
es
great
Estados
nation,
Unidos?
the United States,
Con
was
migrantes.
developed with migrants?
Gracias a eso.
Thanks to that.
Entonces,
So then,
tenemos que seguir
we have to continue
buscando
seeking,
alternativas.
looking for
Lo
alternatives.
mismo en el caso
Just
de la
as, for instance,
violencia,
also in the case of violence,
hay que atender las causas.
we have to look into the root causes of
Antes,
violence.
En el caso de
And
nuestro
also
país,
in the case of our country,
no se atendía a los jóvenes.
youth were never cared
único
for, no services
que
for
se
young
hizo
people. The only thing
fue
that was done
Llamarles
was
ninis,
call them
etiquetarlos de
young
manera
people who didn't work, who didn't
discriminatoria.
study. This is a discriminatory
Ninis,
labeling
ni
for
estudian ni trabajan.
youth. They don't study, they don't work. Ninis,
Y
they were
nunca
called in Mexico.
se
They don't do
ocuparon
one thing, they
de
don't
los
do
jóvenes.
the other thing either. So no one was
Y
ever
todos esos
caring
jóvenes
for our youth in Mexico.
solo
All those young
tenían
people
como
only
opción
had, the only
o
option they had, I
emigrar,
mean, was to migrate.
que muchos lo hicieron,
And many
actuando
migrated,
de manera respetuosa,
acting in a respectful
responsable.
manner, a very responsible fashion.
y otros
And
también
others as well
se buscaban la vida
were
cuando
trying
no
to
había
make a
oportunidades.
living because they didn't
en
have
lo
any
que se
other
llama la
opportunities, so they
economía
made a
informal.
living in what we call the informal
buscarse la vida
economy,
en la
which
calle,
is, you know, making a
como se
living out
puede,
on the street, no
sin
matter
caer
what. I mean, whichever way you
en
can make a
actividades
living
ilícitas.
without falling into illicit
Desgraciadamente,
activities.
algunos
However,
sí
unfortunately,
tomaron
many
el
did
camino de
go
las
into
conductas
the path
antisociales.
of antisocial
Pero
behaviors.
no se atendía a los
But
jóvenes.
we
Ahora,
didn't really take care of
hay un
young people in
programa
Mexico. However, we now have a
dedicado a
program
los jóvenes,
devoted
que no
to young
existía.
people. This program never
Hay
existed in the past. There are
2.400.000 jóvenes
2.4 million
que
young
están
people who are
contratados,
being
que
hired.
trabajan
They are working.
como aprendices.
They're apprentices.
¿Qué estamos haciendo?
What are we doing?
Quitándoles
We are taking
el semillero,
away from them this
la reserva,
culture, those seats, the reserves, the
a los
stock.
grupos
We're taking that
delincuencia.
away from criminal
Que no
groups.
enganchen
We're
a los
taking
jóvenes,
youth.
que no se
We
los
don't
lleven.
want our youth to be hooked.
Que
We don't
nosotros
want those criminal
podamos
groups to be
darles
taking our youth
oportunidades a
away.
los
We
jóvenes.
want to give them
Eso es lo que
opportunities.
estamos
That's
haciendo
exactly what we're doing
en México.
in Mexico.
Y
And
termino
let me conclude
también
also
subrayando otra
highlighting
diferencia.
another
importante.
difference, which is quite important.
No hay corrupción
There is no corruption
en el gobierno que represento.
in the administration,
Y no
the
hay
government that I
impunidad.
represent. There's no impunity either.
Está bien marcada, bien
This,
pintada la raya.
we have painted this line that it is very clear. A crime is one thing and the authority is a different thing. There is no criminal association or partnership as before. Yes, we're even ashamed to mention this, to mention that those who were in charge of guaranteeing or ensuring public security were at the service, in the past, were at the service of criminal organizations. This doesn't happen in Mexico anymore. That's why in this meeting, this summit we just held today, all three governments of the three countries, we have reached agreements to continue working together to get peace, to have peace in all three countries, so that we can ensure and guarantee security of our peoples. That's all I wanted to answer to your question, Madam. Yes, we are doing that. Just as I was telling you that in the case of migration, first there were brothers and sisters from Central America and also from Mexico, but now in recent times, a lot of migrants from Venezuela, from Nicaragua, Colombia, Ecuador. We do have a situation. This is these are changes in places where we're the places where people being pushed or are being pushed to leave their towns, their place of origin for many reasons. With drugs, we have a case in point. It's not cannabis, it's not marijuana, it's not poppy. It's not only cocaine either. Now we have fentanyl and chemicals, which are some of the most dangerous type of substance and very harmful for people because they are causing so many deaths. So then, we're working on this in an organized manner. In the case of Mexico, this led us to make all the ports and the customs offices to be controlled by the armed forces in Mexico. All the sea customs office, because fentanyl and other chemicals come from Asia, and they are processed in labs, and we are avoiding the entrance of those chemical substances, and we are destroying labs. The Navy Secretariat is in charge of managing ports and customs, sea customs offices. For instance, we had so much trafficking of chemicals in the port of Manzanillo and also in Lázaro Cárdenas. Now the Navy is in charge of controlling those customs. And all the customs, the land customs offices along the borderline are now under the responsibility of the Ministry of Defense, National Defense Ministry. So we are combating fentanyl and those chemicals, and we're doing this because we care
nada humano nos es ajeno.
Nothing human is alien to us. We truly care being able to help
A lo que está sucediendo
and to
en Estados Unidos.
be of help. The situation in the United States, deaths because of overdose of
Pero
fentanyl.
también, como
And
hoy
but just as we discussed today,
no es un asunto
this is
solo
not
de Estados Unidos.
only an issue of the United States. The thing is that if we do not face this problem, this scourge,
Lo vamos a
we are going to suffer it ourselves as well.
Entonces tenemos que
So
actuar
we have to act
de manera
in a
coordinada
coordinated fashion,
y eso
and that
se viene haciendo y ahora
is
se
something we've
trató
been doing, and we discussed
y
it
está en el comunicado
in
que
this summit.
vamos
It is in the communique we are about to give you,
Estamos,
and
defendiendo
we are
la vida.
defending life, the life. As I was telling you, I was telling Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden,
a sus equipos de trabajo
their teams,
de que tenemos
I
solo
was
dos
telling them as well,
campañas
we only have 2 campaigns,
de publicidad o de
publicity or
propaganda
propaganda
en el gobierno.
campaigns in the
Y una
government, in my
está
administration.
dedicada
One is dedicated or
a que
devoted
no se
to
consuma la
not
droga,
consuming drugs. Say no to drugs.
porque tenemos que
Because
pensar
we
también en
have to
eso.
also think of that.
Se volvió fama
It became quite a famous thing, public fame,
todo lo relacionado
everything related to
con las bandas.
gangs.
Hay hasta series
There are even series
sobre
of gangs
la delincuencia organizada.
and organized crime, gangs of
Y
organized
es
crimes.
como una apología
And this is like an apology
de, lo deseable
of that which is desirable,
porque son
because
residencias
there are residences,
aparecen en las
very
series,
rich homes in those
casas
series,
lujosísimas,
very luxurious
carros últimos modelos,
homes, and the cars,
mujeres, hombres,
men and
guapos,
women, all very good looking, very
bien
handsome
vestidos,
men and
con
women,
alhajas,
well dressed, with jewelry all
con
over the
mucho
place,
poder, que
with a lot of power.
levantan el teléfono y
And they
hablan
pick up the phone and they
a un
call
jefe de la policía,
the head of the police force, head of the
Incluso
military,
a un
or even
presidente.
a president of a country.
y eso es lo que se difunde.
And that's what's being disseminated
Pero
all over.
hemos visto
But we
alguna
have
serie
seen
acerca del daño del
a
fentanilo,
series on the damage caused
de cómo
by
en 6
fentanyl,
meses
how in 6
se
months
destruye la vida de un joven
the life of a young person is
y lo que
destroyed,
contienen
and
esas
what
dosis
those doses contain.
que tienen hasta ácido
They
muriático.
have muriatic acid.
Se informa sobre eso.
Do people inform
No.
about the situation? Do people let
Entonces,
other people know about this? No, of
también
course not.
a
So we
emprender
are
una
going to
campaña
be
informativa.
launching an information
Yo
campaign.
comentaba
As I was telling
de que
the
los
President and the
vapeadores
Prime Minister, I said, the vapors, yes,
dicen no hacen
they say,
daño,
well, they're not
nada
bad.
más
I
tienen
mean, they
5
just have 5
sustancias,
substances, that's
pero
it.
no son dañinas.
But they're not bad.
Hicimos una investigación.
We did some research on this.
Tienen más de 30
Over
sustancias
30
dañinas y
substances
cancerígenas.
harmful and cancer-causing substances in those devices people
Por-
smoke with. However,
El llamado lobby,
because of the lobbying, corruption as well,
manejo de la publicidad,
publicity or advertising
se
management,
permite
then
y muchos
this is being
padres
allowed.
de familia,
And there are
madres de
many
familia,
parents, mothers,
saben
fathers who don't even know
sobre el daño que
the
causan
damage
los llamados.
that there are
Tenemos que informar.
children
Para
are
esto,
going through because of
pues no
vapors. We have
solo,
to look into this,
eh,
but really,
Lo tiene que hacer es la
this
responsabilidad
is not
del
only the
gobierno,
responsibility of the
también los
government,
medios.
this is also the responsibility
Nos,
of the media.
pueden ayudar mucho.
You can also help us so much on
informar
this
más.
to, spread the word,
Que-
to inform people
las estaciones de radio,
radio stations, television networks. They should be devoting time for this, to inform people, to guide people on this, on how bad drugs can be for people's health, and that people can be successful and they can be happy without needing to fall into drug addiction, those mortal traps. Well, all this, that's what we've been discussing. I think I'm taking more than the time that I should have taken. It's cold outside. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.
A continuación, se tomará la fotografía oficial de los mandatarios de México, de los Estados Unidos de América y de Canadá.
I want the record to show I don't know what questions I didn't answer. I'm prepared later. Thank you very much.
Down the front. Down down.
Es así como finaliza esta ceremonia. Que tengan todos muy buenas tardes.
Thank you very much. We conclude this press conference. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.